Coming up next on the Voice of Alabama Politics, Cornerstone confusion. Also, the V-Team takes a look at the Victoryland case. And Speaker Mike Hubbard, he's for sale. Or lease.
One hit, one to get a bit of two, to get a bit of two, to get a two, now three. Three and all three, to get a bit of four, to get a bit of four, to get a four, now five.
And now his businesses are. All this and much, much more coming up next on The V.
The Voice of Alabama Politics. With your host, Bill Britt. And the V-Team with Claire Austin, Susan Britt, Jack Campbell, Baron Coleman, Charlana Spencer, and special reports with Jonathan Barbie. Now, the #1 political show in Alabama, The V.
Welcome to the Voice of Alabama Politics, where we tackle the tough issues so you have the hard facts. I'm your host, Bill Britt, and as always, I'm joined by the V-Team. Welcome all.
Welcome.
Lots of ladies with you this
Yes,
Sunday.
I am.
Bill and the Blondes.
Yeah, it had to come to this one day. Claire, welcome back. You were in Cuba.
Well, I've been all sorts of places, but yes,
Yeah.
I was.
Yeah, well, how was Fidel?
I don't know, I didn't meet with him, but it was a lovely country, but very expensive.
Yeah, well, we're glad to have you back in the U.S.
Glad to be back.
This past week, Beth, a lot of confusion came up about the Cornerstone case. Susan, I know you've covered it to a large degree. Governor Robert Bentley invoked Executive Order 13, in which he took the authority over the primary responsibility over the gaming laws of Alabama and gave it back to the local DAs. Now, there's been pushback from the Attorney General's office, and they are not wanting to cede any power to the governor. But Susan, the Attorney General's office itself has set up a precedent for this type of thing.
They have, surrounding the Green Track incident. Back when DA Greg Griggers obtained an indictment for perjury and lying on behalf of actually 2 members of Luther Strange's staff for giving false information to trigger the warrants to go in and raid that facility. However, the Attorney General stepped in and took that case away from the local authorities and brought it back into the Attorney General's office, and now and it's gone silent ever since.
And so what we're, this is the strangest case, Beth.
No pun intended?
Yeah.
So wait, let me get this right. Strange came in and took over a case that concerned his own employees.
Exactly.
Correct.
And that's not a conflict of interest.
Well, that's the whole thing. It's just fallen into a black hole.
But this, for the record, let's out there for the viewers. This was in either 2012 or 2013,
right.
when he probably didn't have himself surrounded by the best of staffs.
Right. Well,
and things have changed in the last 12 months.
Oh yeah. One of the people that was on that was Sonny Reagan.
Right.
Yes.
Sonny Reagan, we believe, is one of the ones who was indicted, we don't know that for sure, by a grand jury. 18 people in Marengo County said that those people who worked for the Attorney General lied to the judge to get a warrant to invade Green Track.
And let me tell you what the judge said about that. And this is regarding the search warrant, the affidavit for the search warrant, and otherwise, which were false and misleading and which were made with reckless disregard for the truth.
Well,
That's
Claire,
pretty strong.
we know Sonny Reagan is a liar and a cheat.
Given what we have seen unfold in the last 2.5 years in the Attorney General's office and what's going on in Lee County with Mike Hubbard, that's kind of his track record.
Yeah.
Like a bull in a china shop, and the truth is not necessarily any.
Yeah.
And that Mark White is basing Hubbard's defense on this one person at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
He's got to be scared to death.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah, really?
Beth, how do you say that the governor doesn't have authority over the Attorney General when the Supreme Court of Alabama in the Cornerstone ruling said that they were the chief magistrate, even said he was like the King of England?
I mean, it seems they're making up the rules as they go.
Yeah.
So I don't know how to justify it for them, because it seems like if the Supreme Court has said it, then so be it. I mean, that's the law of the land as it stands. And I don't understand how the AG's office can argue with it at this point.
Now, also understand that the constitutional amendments in Greene County and in Macon County specify that it be accountable to the local authorities,
Right,
not
right.
the AG,
Right.
not
Well,
the governor.
they haven't really messed with Green Track since then, have
No, they haven't. But, need to go back. All this started under the former Governor Riley and his witch hunt on the gaming toward the end of his 2-year terms. I guess this was probably closer to 08 and 09. And then he pulled it away, and it's really gone back to the locals, and that's where it belongs.
Yeah, it
not
does.
in the
It does.
governor's special prosecutorial gambling,
That task force was a joke, yeah.
With Tyson.
I mean, and Luther, to his defense, Luther Strange has said he wants out of this. He wants out of it. Nobody wants, he doesn't want to be in it. It's terrible for his political career. This is a losing effort. I mean, you want to run on having indicted Speaker Mike Hubbard and convicted him, not having closed down Green Track and Victoryland and all that stuff.
Well, I believe the day after the Shashi ruling, there were, 3,600 people unprompted that showed up for job applications that very next day in Macon County alone.
That's true. These huge facilities they're wonderful employers in their communities. But the thing is, too, if you're going to enforce this electronic bingo rule, you've got to enforce it across the board. And these places are popping up. It's like whack-a-mole for the AG's office. There's no way for them to enforce this across the state.
Well, that's right. And there's so many, as you mentioned, in all these, not all 67 counties, but there's some little tiny ones all over the state.
But,
there's no question about that.
They claim that they had a constitutional amendment passed in Macon County and one in Greene that allowed this type of bingo on electronic thing. I've been studying on bingo. Bingo itself is a very obscure little term. I mean, anything can be bingo. But they did grant the stay. They did that at the last minute. The Supreme Court did. So it's all in limbo right now.
Now, my understanding is, though, the stay is only against the machines and the money being given back. Isn't that correct?
It is, but it's the stay pending appeal. So,
True.
excuse me, that's where they're going. I think, in many ways, this budget switcheroo we've seen, where you've got the chairman of the ETF fund and the general fund switching places, I think this plays into the overall plan of passing Marsh's gaming bill. Don't you, Claire?
I'm not really sure. I mean, obviously they've been office mates, Pittman and Orr, and, one's general fund Orr's had for this entire time, and Pittman's had the education, and they're now going to switch. Now, there's a lot of people that thinks that believe or have a thought process that it gives, by switching like this, that it gives them the authority to go in and raid the Special Education Trust Fund more.
Yeah.
But now, I think maybe it sets it up for this game. And but really and truly, as we were just talking about it, we need this bingo issue settled in the state of Alabama. It has been a cloud over Alabama for at least 8 years.
Well, and they're going to try to get through this CA, Beth, that says they can have the gaming according to Marsh's plan, but Milton McGregor and Green Track they already have that authority. And it looked like Bentley tried to give an open door, but Luther didn't take it.
Right. I'm not sure what's going to happen with that, but I agree with Claire that we've got to get this settled. I mean, we're closing down 31 DMVs to save $100,000. How much money are we spending statewide in a strapped budget just arguing over this and legal fees and enforcement?
And counting.
Exactly.
Well, we're
That's
spending
a huge
$20,000
budget cut.
a week just to store these worthless machines. I mean, it's kind of crazy, really. Well, we're going to have to leave it right there. We'll be right back. You're watching The V, the voice of Alabama politics.
Hey, that worked out good with Bill and the Bonds.
Well, you get three women in here. I don't get a word in edgewise. Anyway, it's fine. let's talk about, I don't know, we're going back to this.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
Worst nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to the V, the voice of Alabama politics. Last Monday, Governor Robert Bentley declared a special election after the passing of Representative Leslie Vance. Sad news across the state. However, he only gave a week for the qualifying. I mean, he declared it on a Monday, and then tomorrow, they've got to be qualified.
By 5 o'clock.
By 5 o'clock.
That is very
Have
quick,
you ever heard of that?
highly unusual. And of course, you know, it just very sad to see Representative Leslie Vance. He's been a great institution and a wonderful representative for all of East Alabama.
You know, Beth, it almost seems like they've got their candidate.
Well, it seems like that. And, you know, look at this election compared to the special election to fill Representative Newton's seat back in, 2014, where they left it so that when he got elected, he would have one day in the legislative session, versus this election where it looks like they're trying to speed up the timeline so that they'll be able to get somebody in there who's going to vote right in time for the legislative session to begin.
Well, and Representative Vance had been ill for some time, so and a great guy, but that district had not really been represented because of his ill health. But it's still, Claire, you've been around party politics forever.
But just like Beth was saying, they do it and they pick it to however it may benefit them the most during whoever's in charge.
Well, I mean, it's fine with me. I just like, I was talking to Brandon Mosley, who writes for us at the Alabama Political Report. He goes, 7 days to qualify? How does that work?
And honestly, that's a competitive district for the Democrats, and I think that could be part of it. That was one of the seats that if the Democrats have a good candidate, the numbers are there that seat can be picked up if the stars align and everything. So that could be part of it too.
Yeah, because Leslie's been a Democrat all his life.
And he
only
just
changed
switched.
the last 4 years.
Yeah.
5 years. 5 years.
Well, he was always very nice to us. I never heard a bad word said about him. You know, you brought this up earlier. Senator Hank Sanders has said that the closing of the 31 DMVs was political. It certainly didn't save a whole lot of money. But
Okay, for the record, I just want y'all to know, I had someone even come up to me. We don't have DMVs in the state of Alabama. We have driver's license offices. Okay. DMVs are like what they have in Virginia, where they come in and inspect cars and they get all this money. We just have driver's license offices.
That's because if in Alabama, if you can crank it, you can drive it on the road legally.
Right, even if it's got
headlights.
If it has a lawnmower motor and at least 3 wheels.
It is driving some of our public safety friends crazy because some people have misspoke and they are driver's license offices.
They closed 31 driver's license offices and only saved $100,000. I mean, Beth, it sounds political because it's mainly in black districts, right?
Yeah, bet you it's political. Look at it. I mean, you were saving $100,000 making this huge move. It inconveniences not just lower income people, but also our veterans that need photo IDs to get their benefits that they have rightfully earned fighting for this country. And they can't get the paperwork and the stuff they need to do that. And all it is to punish lawmakers who wouldn't vote for the governor's tax plan. That's all this is about. And it's putting them in between a rock and a hard place where they vote to take more money out of working people's pockets, or they don't have these services in their district.
Right.
It's putting them in a lose-lose situation.
It certainly has painted us once again across the nation as looking like a bunch of racist buffoons. I mean, even if it...
Well, you mean, okay, I hear what all y'all are saying, but also when you look at, if you look at it from sheer business, you're thinking, how many people go in this door in, whether it's Greene County, how many go in this one in Bullock County, how many go in Lowndes County, Dallas, you know, in the Black Belt areas, how many people walk in versus somebody walking in Montgomery, Shelby, or Madison? And they're looking at numbers, I believe.
I do believe that. I agree with you 100% on that. However, if you remember in 2014, we had the rate increase on the driver's license. It went from $23.50 to $36.25.
That doesn't matter. That's just more money.
Then why are we trying to save $100,000 when we just created $12 million?
And at the end of the day, Claire, this isn't a business. This is the state, and we've got constitutional rights that we've got to keep up with. No, I mean, there are constitutional rights at stake here.
We're supposed to lose money. We're terrible.
This is Alabama. That's what we do.
I think I have some ways that we could save money, and we could open back up parks, and we could also get the driver's license.
I do.
I agree.
That's what I'm saying. We don't have to do it slash and burn. We can be
the Alabama
smart.
Ethics Commission, and that's $1.9 million.
I am 100% behind you on that, and we'll stay there.
Claire says, close her down, baby.
Well, I mean,
and I second that motion.
Well, I don't disagree. I mean, you know, that report came out this week, and it was done by the Public Integrity Group.
Oh, yeah.
And
D+ we got.
We got a D+ when it comes to public corruption. Claire, I can't believe we got a D+.
It's not
Can you?
shocking to me. We used to always say, thank God for Louisiana and New York, but, we're right there on the top of the spear.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
but, when we're
We're
joking.
number 7 now in that poll?
Well, or 6, but it really is deplorable.
Yeah, it is.
And it's egregious, first of
Yeah,
all.
it is
And
that.
it's embarrassing, particularly to me as a Republican, that it has gone spiraling down in these last 6 years, and it's just gotten worse.
Well,
Go ahead.
Only thing that saved us is the executive branch wasn't accused of any malfeasance.
Yeah.
But Mike Hubbard and these guys have just brought us down. And look, there's some great Republicans, there's some good Democrats. But these people, Beth, I heard somebody use the analogy that the Democrats just used to knock over convenience stores. These guys, they just get the whole bank.
Right.
But did you look at the study? I mean, it was pretty impressive.
I remember looking at the study and I remember reading it and agreeing with Claire. I think that, we're getting our money out of this Ethics Commission about the same way that Auburn's getting their money out of that, $2 million defensive coordinator we hired.
Yeah.
I think that both of them have nothing to show for themselves right now. And I'm an Auburn alum, I'll say that. But I think at the end of the day, we've got to have government that works. And if this is what we're getting for our money, then I'm with Claire. Shut them down.
Well, we've been
It's a
looking
blind
in-
back eye.
We've been
it's a
looking
blind
at
back
this.
eye.
We've got two convicted governors. We've got a Speaker of the House indicted on 23 felony counts of public corruption. We had the 2-year college fiasco.
And
Well,
When does it stop? When does it stop?
It has to stop.
And
it's
that is,
power and greed and money.
we have been looking at this ethics commission very closely lately, and we are finding some troubling things. Now, we're not ready to report them yet,
Right.
but we have found some very troubling documentation, trips, not
Finances.
filings. I mean, it's just...
And the other thing, the big thing, probably 3 weeks ago, when the Ethics Commission starts questioning and wants to just slam the door in the face of the DAs and the Attorney General's office,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the DAs and the Attorney General need to be prosecuting and doing this, not that little Ethics Commission, and then just handing out all these frivolous opinions that people aren't even asking for.
Yeah, and while we dog everybody from time to time, Luther Strange has a core group over there, including Alice Martin and Matt Hart, that are fine, honest prosecutors. And we don't mean to dog them too hard, but sometimes you just got to point out what's good and what's bad.
Yeah.
But a D+, I think we scored much higher than we should have. We probably deserved an F- if there's such a thing.
Hey, you know what? It's Christmas, it's coming. There's 2016. I bet we might be on the F list in
Yeah.
2016.
Hopefully
There's 11 others, so we'll be in good company.
An F with a bullet going down. All right, you're watching The V. We'll be right back with more news and analysis.
Sadly, this happens too often in families with autistic children.
First nightmare, their child wanders off, disappears, and is nowhere to be found.
Where her body was found just a couple hours ago.
An autistic boy wanders away from home and dies.
Welcome back to The V, the voice of Alabama politics. Last Monday, Mike Hubbard had a hearing at which he asked Judge Walker to allow him to depose 10 of the Attorney General's current and former employees. Judge Walker seemed very hesitant to let him do that, didn't he, Susan?
He did. First of all, Luther Strange has already been deposed once.
Well, he said Luther definitely is out.
Definitely not. He's not going to go there again. He said you had the opportunity to ask the questions you wanted to ask. That's done. He's wanting to depose Matt Hart and Van Davis, and knowing full well, Mark White knows full well, if he deposes them, if he puts them on the witness stand, that makes them a witness and disqualifies them as prosecutors. And that's what he's trying to do. And Judge Walker said, I don't think so.
Claire, they're not even arguing guilt or innocence anymore.
This is egregious. It's nothing but a charade and game. You're exactly right. He wants to we're hoping that the judge would say, oh, yeah, you can, knowing that they couldn't prosecute the case. I mean, that judge is a bright, honorable, highly respected gentleman over in Lee County from everything I've ever heard of from anybody. So it's just a game. It's a charade. There's one act after another.
I had one defense attorney tell me that one of Mark White's greatest skills is billable hours. He really knows how to jack up the time on his client. Now, Judge Walker said, he said from the beginning, he said, I will hear arguments and take testimony on prosecutorial misconduct only as it applies to Nova Scotia versus the Bank of Nova Scotia versus the U.S. And you have some data on that or some background on that.
Right. That was a 1988 ruling in which, weirdly enough, Sandra Day O'Connor and Anthony Scalia actually agreed on something. There was only one justice dissenting, and basically what they said is that the only way that they will dismiss indictments for prosecutorial misconduct is if, quote, it is established that the errors substantially influence the grand jury's decision to indict. So they have to prove at this point that the grand jury only indicted because of what went wrong. And I don't think they're going to be able to prove that. I think the facts of the case show that the speaker at least has enough facts here to get him to trial, and the indictments stand on their own merits.
I mean, Susan, we've had a friend tell us that you could basically hold a gun to somebody's head. If you didn't hold a gun to someone's head, it was all right.
Yeah, I mean, you could basically do anything in front of the grand jury, and unless it's, like you said, holding a gun to their head, threatening them physically or personally to make a decision in your favor, it's permissible.
Yeah, and that's what so many people say, oh, well, it's no big deal to get indicted in Alabama. You can indict anybody. I'm like, well, maybe so, but not on 23 counts.
Thank you.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
And when you look at the emails and you look at some of the stuff in there, you go, how didn't they know this was criminal, right?
Another legislator has already been convicted on one of the 23 counts.
Yeah, they forget about Greg Wren. Everybody keeps forgetting about him.
They just sweep him under the rug. No, he had to resign. He had to get arrested. He had to plea on one of the counts that Hubbard's accused of.
Yeah. And he's going to be, Greg Wren, and I've dogged him a lot, but I mean, in reality, Greg Wren's a decent human being who lost a very important seat and a very important position and admitted that he did wrong.
Because he got caught up in the power and the money, and he succumbed to that. But at least he said, I'm wrong, I'm going to get out and save my family and my name and everything else. He's done the honorable thing.
Right. I think
What do you mean,
the
step down
smartest
because he was
one.
accused of something?
Yeah.
Well, oh, wow, that's new.
Well, it happens in most states. It just doesn't happen with our speaker in Alabama.
It really speaks to the culture that we live in, that people would actually believe that Luther Strange would be so corrupt that he would indict Hubbard to further his political career. I mean, it's not that corrupt down here. It's pretty bad sometimes.
This is ruining his life. If at the end of the day, if this were a political persecution like they're trying to set it up to be, what are we fighting for at that point? You're ruining Mike Hubbard's life if he didn't do anything wrong. But if he did, then by all means, justice needs to be served. And what I want to know is, where are the other people who are on the other side of these indictments? This was a give and take deal, right?
Sure, absolutely.
And it takes somebody writing that check, and it takes somebody depositing that check. And what we're seeing right now, and what I'm frustrated about, is you've got Mike Hubbard sitting here in trial every few days for a hearing. Where are the people who wrote the checks? Why aren't the indictments bringing down this entire ring of cronyism that put him where he is?
Well, I guess what I would say is that, he's the kingpin, and then Riley and all these other people have helped him get to where he is, or gave him the power, the money to be the little Hitler. But I'm assuming that all this will come out in the wash when the trial starts.
They're also sitting on the witness list for his trial.
Well,
That's true.
I asked Van Davis in an interview, I said, well, Mr. Acting Attorney General Davis, I said, what about these other people? I mean, the law says if you give or receive a thing of value, he said, they're material witnesses.
That's right.
And I said, is there any for now in there? And he just, they're material witnesses.
He can't say that. And back to what Beth was saying to you earlier, to the viewers, let's remember, Luther recused himself because he was up for election that year in 2010 and was a candidate. And so Van Davis has been the appointed DA. So Luther wouldn't be, if it was a political appointee driven case to come after Mike Hubbard, he would do it himself.
Right.
But he recused himself and put in a, long-standing, very smart, respectable, admirable DA
until
in
that-
track
Alabama.
record for
with a
handling
proven
these
track
type of
record,
cases.
right.
Yeah, and until Van Davis took on this case, and I've known him for years, I have never heard a bad word said about him. And if you
Yeah.
talk to law enforcement folks all over the state, they'll tell you Van Davis is one of the best DAs that the state has ever had.
And do remember, everybody's trying to make this as it's the only public corruption case that Luther Strange's office has handled.
Oh, Lord,
There's
no.
21 plus I know of in some of the filings that have to go with
Yeah.
the Mike Hubbard. I've gone through them. I've listed them.
Well, one other thing that we saw this week, just happened to be taking a ride around Auburn, and lo and behold, Mike's got his business building for Auburn Network, where his radio station, all that is, that's up for sale. Now he's put up part of his Craftmaster Printing, he's put that up for lease. So Claire, we've always known Hubbard was for lease or sale, but now his buildings are too.
Well, it tells me he's a desperate man. He spent a lot of money, and I think one of them was for sale, and they couldn't sell it, so now he's trying to lease it.
Yeah,
trying to get some revenue in somehow or another.
Those are some big facilities down there. How's the Auburn market going? You think he'll get rid of them soon?
Auburn's growing fast and Auburn's building, but I don't know how much of that growth has been owed to what the speaker's done for Auburn versus how many people are now staying away and staying clear and frankly don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. I wouldn't. We had joked about raising the money to buy the Auburn Network building to set up the Democratic headquarters there, just because we know that would get at him. But
that's just evil, like you are.
Well, it is not a good sign.
No.
It shows some desperation.
I think he may have run through everybody else's money, and now he's having to
Right.
lease
Like,
it.
he certainly doesn't want to spend his own.
He can't be raising campaign money from people in the legislature, and I guess he's getting money out of his defense fund, but the way things are going, I can't imagine a lot of people want to give him a lot of money.
well, if I'm looking at it as a wife, I'm saying no more.
No more.
I'm saying no more.
No
I want to
more.
make sure that I got a roof over my head too.
You get the last word. You've been watching the voice of Alabama politics. You can catch news stories every day on alreporter.com. Like us on Facebook, watch us on YouTube, and always join us on Sunday. Thank you for watching. Never thought I'd get y'all to shut up.
Sometimes you can't get us to talk.